Welcome, friends. Today in the Carpenter Shop, I have with us a very special guest, James Baldwin, Master Carpenter. Welcome, James.
Hey, thank you very much.
It's
Glad
so
to be
great
here. I
to.
always like to talk about stuff I like to talk about.
That's awesome. Well, you are our very first carpenter that we've ever had in the Carpenter Shop here on the Cuppa Joe. So I'm super excited to ask you a couple of questions about the Loretto staircase. But before we jump into that, as we ask all of our guests, please tell us a little bit about yourself and how do you like your cup of coffee?
Well, I started as an apprentice carpenter. I worked through my journeymanship. But before that, actually, I worked for my grandfather, who was my grandpapa, who was a Dutch immigrant. And so that's really is my inspiration is from my grandpa. And so he was a wood turner from Holland, and he made his living turn posts and architectural spindle turning for houses and things. And he turned plenty of stair posts, balusters posts, ballast newel posts, and all that. So that was my how I got introduced into the stair business that occupies my entire career. So I have to thank him for that. So um, anyway, I did go through a carpenter's apprenticeship and graduated from that, but eventually I decided I preferred working the finish end, and that was my grandfather was there to help me with that, and so I bought. He had a little business, and I bought it. It was a wood turning business, and he also supplied wood parts for builders and stuff. And I bought his business and I took it over. And so I was, was in 1975. Had my own business already by then, and tried to steer it in back to the stair work, which we were already doing, and that's how I got involved in that. But his background is everything he learned from people that were born in the 19th century. And that's the golden age of architecture and stair building and whatnot. So I think that got me interested in the historical aspect of this, not just modern stair construction. Well,
Well,
in
that's
any
awesome.
rate, these are some pictures you're looking at here. Some of the things I've been involved with,
Yeah.
mostly after, I got toward the end of my career. But the first half of my career was spent as more as a contractor, building staircases, mostly curved staircases, mostly for rich people. And so that's how that goes. Now, as far as I like my coffee, I can't really say that because I've never had a cup of coffee, and that's because I was raised Mormon, and so we don't drink coffee, but my wife drinks coffee and likes it. So you'd have to ask her. I know what she would say. She likes her coffee black, like she likes her men. She's told me that. So that
Uh,
was,
From the movie Airplane.
yeah. So that's a little joke we do, but so that was 50 years ago. We're still married, so we must must see something in me. I don't know. That's how that goes. But so she's the coffee drinker. I'm not.
Well, that's great. Well, I'm like you. I don't like coffee. I prefer tea, actually. I was just
Okay.
telling a friend yesterday that the more you can make it not taste like coffee, the more I like it. So if you can put a lot of milk in it, sugar, or just change it to tea, all the better for me. Well, James, while I was doing some research on the internet, I came up with some of these pictures. I see you like boats. You've been into carpentry for, wow, like over 30, 40 years?
Yeah,
How many
that's
years
about 40 years.
approximately? 40 years.
My
Wow.
career is about 40 years.
And I
I'm
see
retired
that.
now, so I, that. that's over. But when I worked for about 40 years as a finish carpenter, rough carpenter, you name it, and as a stair builder and a wood turner. And manufacturing parts for as a custom manufacturer of custom stair parts, including, curved and sculptural handrail parts that have to be custom made. And I had a business doing that. And then toward the end of my career, I became interested in teaching other people. And that's how I got involved in teaching seminars and classes and being a guest lecturer, stuff like that, because I actually knew something that was missing. And that was I knew about some of the woodworking techniques of the 18th and 19th century because it was part of my business. So I made it my business to know that stuff. And that's something that's general. I mean, if you ask an expert today, how do they build this stairway we're talking about? They don't know. But they don't know because they know how it's done today. They don't have really much of a clue how it was done 200 years ago, 150 years ago, unless they spend time in a library like I have, not in just any library, but the old. I used to go down to the old library in Los Angeles, and it was an ancient building, and in the basement, for reference only, were these 100-year-old stair books like this one here, and so I started spending time and learning about woodworking techniques and reading these, trying to decipher these old books until I discovered a copy machine in the library. It was a nickel copy machine. So I went in there with bags of nickels and I started copying these old books. They were for reference only. You couldn't check them out. They were falling apart even as you touch them. So uh, I made copies of them and I brought all this Xerox copies, whatever, to my office, and these stack of papers sat on my desk for at least 10 years, and I would read them every day for lunch until some stuff started to make sense. And that's how I discovered these techniques that are largely unknown. And then when the internet came around, I discovered, people discovered me, I discovered them, and I found myself answering questions that people had about some of these old techniques, and they didn't understand it. But I not only understood it, I was using it in my business. So I was able to answer some of their questions, and one thing led to another. So that's what I ended up teaching some of that stuff. And I found that some of the old techniques are just as valid today as they were then. And so
Well, Jim, I see
that,
that not only have you built staircases, you've also given lectures, classes, you've written articles such as this one. And this one article talks about a staircase in a bottle. And if I can kind of zoom in, what I like to do is show a picture here of this project that you did. And just to show our audience that you have some great experience as a master spiral staircase builder yourself. So tell us about this project. What went down here?
well, now the stair that you're looking at there right in the middle, that's made it's mostly plywood, but that's in my rented shop. And then I had to take it apart and deliver it to a job. This job was on an island, and there was no parking and there was no access. It was really hard. We had to take it apart in pieces and then bring it through a narrow walkway into this building, into the house, and reassemble it. Uh, and so that's how it was actually like building a staircase in a bottle. And then that what you're seeing the stringers and stuff that I made. It was, I was very young. I was in my 20s when I did this stairway, but I made everything, turned all the posts. The balusters I had those done, but I made all the handrail, all the newel posts, and all the stairs, and I helped with the installation. I had an employee that very fine finish carpenter to help me install this at this home. So it was, it's a freestanding stairway, as you can see, nothing holding it up, but those timbers And now those timbers are way overbuilt, but I didn't know that then. So that was just my approach at doing this. This is before I discovered anybody else, or this just came right out of my head. So it just shows you what even a young person can do with it, that is, that applies himself. Uh, The builder of the Loretto stairway was not some old man on a donkey. He was a young man on donkey, certainly in his early 30s, about the same age as Jesus, if you might, So that to find somebody like that very young was very fortuitous.
Well, speaking of the staircase of Loretto, I've got a picture coming up of that. But before we get there, just try to give us in layman's terms, how do you build a spiral staircase?
Well, you build a spiral stairway basically the same way you build a straight stairway. All the elements that go into a straight staircase has to go into a spiral staircase. It just has to be a spiral when you get done. So I can't explain something that took me, the better part of my life to learn in 5 seconds. It's kind of hard, but all of the elements are there. So I can go into specifically how I think the Loretto Chapel stairway was built, and we can do that right now, but I just can't tell you how it's done. But basically, today it's done with laminated stringers, which are a stringer is the two timbers that you saw there, and they're made up of thin boards like plywood or solid wood, whatever. But it's there. You wrap that around a cylindrical form, a drum, it's called, and you laminate one layer at a time or all together, whatever. But you bend it around to form, and then when the glue dries, it stays. It stays in that shape. You take it off, and that creates uh, a curved stringer or horse, stair horse, whatever you're going to call it. But that's basically, you just make a curved stringer, or at least two of them for each stair, sometimes three, and then you assemble it like you would a regular straight stairway, and it stands up because it's just for the same reason that a straight stairway stands up. It's no mystery about that. Uh, that's so these are some of the books that I got this information from.
Pretty old book, it
Robert
looks like.
Riddell. What?
It's a pretty old book.
Yeah, they're old books. The book in there in the middle, Stair Builders, you can't see it. It's called Scientific Stair Builder, written in 1852. So
That's pretty old.
in that book is the plans to build that stairway.
Hmm.
So I know that not because I actually have a copy of this. I have the 1870 version, another book that he wrote, but it has elements of the first book and then the new stuff that he came up with to make another book. That's how he did it. Robert Riddell was writing books all the time, but he not from scratch. He just add to them,
Hmm.
and every book contained new and improvement things. And so then he'd publish another book, and that was what he did for a living. But he knew what he was talking about. So he also said that this stairway, he's seen this stairway built from this plans successfully several times. So that was his words, not mine. But anyway, that's how they built that one, though. Then is different than how they build it today. And that's the whole point.
Yeah, it's a bit of
The
a lost art and science now. And I understand
mhm.
you've been yourself to the Loretto Museum and you've personally seen the mysterious spiral staircase.
Personally seeing the mysterious spirals. Yeah, yes, I have seen it personally. It was I've seen that stairway and many others as part of my education, that and part of my business. So I made it my business to travel around and see staircases all over the place.
Well, that's
And
awesome.
that one I have been to this place, but of course I didn't walk on it, which I would have liked to have done. But it was roped off, so you could just. But I did get a good look at it.
Well, now that I've brought us what looks like inside the Loretto Museum, I can't resist saying that just before you came on the show, we were talking, and I understand you're in your daughter's um, studio right now, and your daughter, being deaf, does a lot of things to help the deaf. And you're also the first, not just the first carpenter, but you're the first guest I've ever had on the show that knows sign language. And how do you make coffee sign in sign language?
Uh, you have to use the coffee grinder, and that's coffee.
That's awesome.
That's in ASL. I don't know how they do it in other places, but that's ASL.
That's awesome. Well, you're the first ASL guest I've ever had on the show, so I think that's so cool, especially
Well,
since,
I'm no expert. I'm a novice, but I do have one. I have four children, and one of them is deaf. We don't know why. She was born deaf.
well, I think that's really interesting because, a lot of times they talk about the virtues of silent Saint Joseph. And, for one, I usually go on too much and talking. And there's a beauty sometimes about silence and how you can communicate without using your mouth. So I think that's really interesting because there's a lot of silence around this staircase. But let's break some of that silence today. And I put two pictures here. The one just above your head is the original one, and the one above my head is about 6 years later. So give us a little bit of an insight as to what's going on here. And I think the question that most people want to ask is why was it originally built without the safety handrails and banisters and soffit and support brackets? What's your thought?
Well, that's, why one of the reasons why I don't buy into the miracle part of this, because nobody would leave a stairway like it's pictured here without the banister. Nobody would. I would hate to walk up and down that, especially if I was a nun wearing a long robe with the rosary hanging and all off my waist and stuff. Uh, that would be, yeah, it's a death trap waiting to happen. And the reason I can I believe that he didn't put a handrail on is because he probably didn't know how to build a handrail, because it is a common division of labor in a stair shop for the stair builders to build a stair and the handrailer to do the handrail.
Uh,
So there's a guy that actually makes the handrail and another guy installs it. And so I mean there's a division of labor within any stair shop then, just as it is today. And so this guy knew how to build a stair, but he probably was not familiar with the handrail, and so the handrail didn't get done. So, but he not by him.
Yeah, well, if you
It,
go to the museum website, it says that the handrails and the soffit, and I also had the curator of the museum, Richard Lindsley, on the show recently, and he told us that Philip Hesh, he's the carpenter who added the handrails and the bottom soffit and the support bracket that you see there on the column. He added those in 1887, whereas the original staircase built above your head was built around 1881. And it's interesting that you said there's different divisions of labor because in my research of the staircase and this whole chapel, I mean the chapel is patterned after Sainte-Chapelle in Paris, and you had masons and carpenters from Mexico, France, Germany, Santa Fe, New Mexico at the time, a very dusty Wild West town, but it was kind of like the United Nations because they had, workers from all over the globe back in the late 1800s. It just kind of boggles my mind. Um, but yeah, so the you mentioned a good point that for safety they had to add the banisters, and in many books, somewhat humorously, they talk about how the sisters and their students, because this was a girls' school, they would go down the chapel stairs on their bottoms because they were deathly afraid of falling off. And I think if you fell to 22 feet, it might not feel good if you fell off.
well, you wouldn't fall if you were halfway up the stair. You're 11 feet off the ground, and
Yeah.
that's gonna leave a mark. So if you fall off, so they were wise to go up on all fours and down on their butt, whatever, but that is actually the only way to use that stair if without a handrail. safety rail. It was Mr. Hesh, Philip Hesh, was actually the one who made this stairway usable and somewhat safe. So I think he deserves more credit than he gets just for that. Despite the you know, whether you like the way the handrail turned out, which I don't particularly like that way he did it, but
All right, so now we're back. Sorry about that. So you were just saying that the handrails that Philip Hesh added in the bottom soffit, he doesn't get enough credit, and you're just starting to say that you might have done the handrails differently.
no, I'm saying he may not have actually made the handrail. The handrail might have come from a stair shop someplace
Ah.
and been shipped to there, and he might have assembled it. All the components can be made that way, especially using the systems in these books. I can make parts from plans only and put them in a box, send them to a job that I've never seen, but the stuff would fit because if they build it according to the plan, the parts are going to fit. So that's how I learn. That's how I run my business that way.
Well, that's interesting you should say that, James, because in my research, if you look at some of the historians, they say that Philip Hesh did have a carpentry shop there in Santa Fe. And a local historian, Mary Cook, in her book, she also has the theory that probably the staircase came over pre-cut from France and it was assembled on site. What are your thoughts on that theory?
Well, it's a long ways to France, and that may have happened though. And we don't know, the time. He said he was there for 6 months. Well, that's not long enough to 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 contact the people in France and contract them to build something and then get it back. The logistics are a little bit hard, but he wouldn't have to go to France because these kind of stairs were being built here too. So you could go to Chicago. The end of the Santa Fe Trail is in St. Louis. So St. Louis is the hub of commerce and all that, and there was plenty of millworks in St. Louis. You could have ordered this stuff out of St. Louis. You could have ordered this stuff from Los Angeles. The old Santa Fe Trail goes to Los Angeles at the wharf at San Pedro. So he could have ordered parts made from stair shops there. So we don't really know, but Mr. Philip might have actually manufactured the handrails in his workshop there in Santa Fe. You're telling me? I don't know that, but I am saying that you really need a workshop to make handrail like that. You need vices, you need a whole range of tools and stuff. It's not easy. It's not easy then. It's not easy now.
But James, you mentioned the wood. A lot of times, on the museum website, they say there's three principal mysteries. One is that nobody knows where the wood came from. Now, they did have a wood technician analyze it, and he said it's a type of spruce. So one question is, how much does the wood type matter? Like when you're building a spiral staircase, I mean, would you want to choose a certain type of wood over another for its qualities and flexibility?
Well, not really. Building staircases like building furniture. What you're seeing are fascias, uh, veneers, appliques, moldings, and all that. But what you don't see is a construction timber that's underneath there, and that could be anything. Okay, and so we don't know what's underneath there because we can't see under there anymore. With the plaster soffit, we're not able to look and see. But it could have been made of spruce, but spruce is not there's no reason why it couldn't be made in other things as well.
Hmm.
So
So
I
what when
don't
you
buy
make
into
your
that.
staircases, what is your wood of choice when you make your staircases?
The wood of choice would be, there's an old saying that, there's walnut. Walnut is worth the whole forest of mahogany. I don't know. It's walnut, mahogany. there's a lot of hardwoods, especially for the handrail,
Hmm.
but the spruce would be just fine for the stair, for the facings, for the tread. So I've been there. I've looked at it. It looks like spruce to me.
Hmm.
It looks like
Yeah,
Sitka spruce.
yeah,
And
they
Sitka spruce, by
identified
the
it.
way, is not just growing. Sitka spruce does not just grow in Alaska. It grows from Northern California all the way to Alaska. And it was a very common shipbuilding material of the 19th century. It's particularly used for spars, for the, mast spars and sometimes planking, but it was it was a major export item to even all the way to Europe. They shipped Sitka spruce all around the world in the golden age of sail.
Hmm.
So the fact that I've seen it, it looks like spruce, it looks like Sitka spruce. I don't know what it is, but the wood identification that I've read about is rather absurd. You cannot identify a piece of wood from a scrap, from a little scrap or a little sliver. There's no positive ID possible because what you're really trying to do is identify the tree that the lumber comes out of. So I show you a piece of oak and I say this is oak. Well, that may be a fact, but it may be something else too. In order to get a positive ID, you need all the other elements of that comprise the tree, like bark, uh, a big enough board. You need bark. You need to see maybe the needles in the cones. So the sap. There's all kinds of things that make up a positive ID. You can't get a positive ID from a scrap of wood. We don't even know where that scrap of wood came from. I don't. I never read where they came up with a scrap of wood. So, and I said a scrap of wood could be a scrap of the facings, or, but what we're interested is something that's part of the structure of the stairway, and that's inside. What that is, I don't know.
Ah, very good. Well, yeah, the the curator when
And
he
to
was
see, that's
on,
why I can't buy the miracle part of, oh, we can never identify the wood because that no positive ID is possible unless you have all the elements of the tree. Then you can positively identify the lumber. There's only like several 100,000 different kind of trees in the world, and thousands and thousands of marketable timber. It's impossible.
yeah, well, that's interesting. So yeah, they I read that same report that you're talking about by Forrest Easley, and he identified it as a spruce, and he said it's somewhere between a Sitka spruce, as you said, and also an Engelmann spruce. Now, interestingly, if you do a little research, as I have done, there happens to be in France, where most of the materials of this chapel came from, there happens to be a naturally grown what's called Norway spruce, and that falls between a Sitka and an Engelmann spruce, interestingly enough. Now, Mary Cook, in her history book, she says that she thinks it was a gentleman named Francois Jean Rocas, or he later changed his name to Frank because the Americans didn't want to say Francois. So he went and signed his name in legal documents as Frank Rocas. And she thinks that he came over because she found some documents that showed he was on a cargo ship in 1880 and that he built it in 1881 and that he had cargo with him. And sometimes it seems like a far-fetched to get, wood all the way from France, but we have to remind ourselves that, the stained glass windows came from France, that amazing Debian harmonium, which looks like an organ up in the choir loft, that came from France. The huge statue on the top of the church came from France. So a lot of things, including the architect, was from France. With your master carpenter eye, when you look at the staircase, can you see if it's like built from a Frenchman? Because on one show from the SMA, the Staircase Manufacturers Association, one CEO of a staircase company, he said the French have been doing this for centuries. But to your eye, does it have like qualities of a French design?
Uh, I don't know that I can answer that question, but it is certainly could have been done in France. It's a, you know, it. parts of it could have been done, parts of it would have been beneficial to do in a shop with power machinery. Power machinery, would make some of the job, some of the cutting easier. And they did have power machinery in some shops. And power machines were run by, steam engines and stuff, but they had all the basic woodworking machines that we have today. They were just run by water wheels at first and steam engines and then eventually diesel motors. But the machinery is the same in a fabricating wood shop. They had power machines. So
Well, what's
it could
interesting
it could
is,
have come from France.
well,
By the way, I want to add that,
yeah,
10 years, 11 years before this stairway was completed in Santa Fe, the Mormons were building the Mormon Tabernacle in Salt Lake City. And that there has a legend all about that. But not only the tabernacle, but an organ. The tabernacle has a vaulted elliptical roof that spans 250 feet by 150 feet. Okay, it's unsupported on the inside. It's made out of trusses. I don't know if you know what a truss is. Truss is a roof frame, a prefabricated roof frame that's lifted up into place. Okay, and these trusses were assembled with wooden pegs and wet rawhide lashings. No metal, no nails, nothing. And that roof, that it's unsupported on the inside. It's a clear span on the inside. That roof stood for 150 years before it was ever renovated, and it housed the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and thousands of people inside.
wow.
So this was completed 11 years before the miracle stairway that we're talking about today.
Yeah,
In 18,
there's many other staircases, and I'm familiar with the one you're talking about in Utah. I came across it recently. In fact, there's two staircases, two spiral staircases in a Mormon temple in Utah that I read about that, predated this one. And it's funny how when you do research, you always come across, two or three more things that you're actually not intending to come across. And that actually helped me come across. Uh, it goes back to, I think, the earliest staircase anyone's ever found is somewhere in China. It's designed on a clay pot. So they already had the idea. This goes back, thousands of years. But also in the Bible, it talks about Solomon's temple. It says there was two what's called winding stair in Solomon's temple. So it's not really anything new, the spiral staircase. And interestingly, as Mary Cook says, she thinks that, the carpenter, the mysterious carpenter, is Frank Rocas. And she says he was a French Compagnon carpenter. It's like some ancient guild. Now, the funny thing is, James, if you Google Compagnon, you come up with this. So the Campagnons are like famous for building spiral staircases. So I thought that's a very interesting coincidence.
that what you're looking at here in these pictures these are, part of their final exams for the students. The Compagnons was a trade guild. It's a school. It's like a finishing school for carpenters. Okay, you go from being a journeyman to a master, and this is part of your exam was to build a model stair. So these models are all over the place of these fabulous staircases, which are very popular, and they were learning how not just to build models, but how to build a real thing. And this is part of their education. Campagnons. So and both I think Jean Rocas, Frenchie, and Philip Hench. I think they were both alumni from the French Campagnons, as was the Bishop Lamy or something, huh?
Yeah,
The
Bishop
guy,
LeMay. Yeah, he was
they're,
from
they're,
France as well.
they're all connected to that. So,
Yeah, well, Philip Hesch, I think he was from Austria or Germany, but most everyone else was from France, including the building contractor, the bishop, as you mentioned, Jean-Baptiste Lemay. Um, so yeah, it's really interesting. Well, let me take us back to the topic at hand on this specific staircase, and let me ask you question number four. Engineer Anita Sumali in a scholarly paper says that this 32-step staircase is 8 times weaker because it has no center pole. Explain for us, please, why a center pole makes a spiral staircase stronger, and why do you suspect that this carpenter did not use a center pole?
Well, number one, there is a central pole there. It's just a twisted spiral ribbon. That takes the place of its central pole. But so it does have a central pole, but I can tell you that according to I mean, I have an old book and it has the plans to build this stairway in that book. And it doesn't even include any kind of a central pole because it's not part of the structural aspect of building the stair. And the instructions for building the stair places all the load on the the outside stringer, all of it. Okay. And the way they've done it is all the wood is in compression. There's none that are in, you know, tension or anything. It's so there, all of the inside stringer is not necessarily needed at all. And I'll tell you another reason why I believe that is because when I was a very young man, I worked on a stairway in a stairwell once that was built entirely of timber. There was no, there was an outside stringer that was nailed on. This is on the inside of a stairwell, and it went up to Revelation just like this one with a second floor in the middle. But it went up and it had all the treads and risers on it, but they were hanging out and the inside radius was, there was nothing there. It was a hole. And it was supported by the outside stringer and a timber work frames, lattice work timber work frames that go up like rafters, a series of rafters and they supported the risers that support in turn support the treads, and there wasn't even a inside stringer there until I was hired to put one in, as a matter of fact, and along with the railing. And but we used that stairway while we worked on it, and it had no inside stringer at all.
Hmm.
I've never seen anything like it, but I can tell you that there's no real live load as opposed to dead load, but there's no real live load on the inside because the inside is as steep as a ladder. So, and it's the steps, these are pie-shaped steps. So the inside is very narrow and very hard to walk on and as steep as a ladder. So the comfortable way to walk on this stairway is like from about the middle of the stairway out to the outside. That's where people would normally walk. The closer you get into the inside, the more ladder, it's like climbing a ladder. You not only wouldn't ascend the inside handrail, but you wouldn't descend it either, because if you trip and fall, you could fall all the way down the stairway. It's very steep. It's just about as steep as a ladder you'd buy at Home Depot. So where the outside is, where the comfortable, it changes pitch from the inside to the outside. The outside, as you can see, is much more gradual ascent. So that's why, I don't buy that. And that's why I can't buy that the interior stringer is absolutely necessary, because I know that it's not
Hmm.
from my own experience.
Yeah, I've seen many different explanations of how it stands because one mystery on the museum website is nobody knows how it stands. But in the same wood technician, Forrest Easley, in his book, in addition to explaining what type of wood it is, he also said that, just like you said, he said it does have a center pole. He said it's just not visible to the layman's eye. And he said exactly like you did, it's the inner stringer that's so tight that forms basically like an invisible center pole. So it does have that central support, even though, the untrained eye like myself can't see it. It's there. Like if you untwist it, it'll look like a normal staircase. If just take a normal staircase and twist it is what I've read. Um, but it's interesting the physics of it. Catholic Answers senior apologist Jimmy Akins, he did a really wonderful YouTube video on this. And in his, he says, yeah, it's not defying any laws of physics, but it is a marvelous feat of carpentry, especially done in those times. But as you indicated, there's a book that tells you how to do it, written by Robert Riddell. And I have to ask you, Jim, if you were asked, to go there and build this staircase, how would you have done it any differently? Would you have made it the same, or would you have done it somehow differently?
Well, I wouldn't do it like it was done, because that is not how we do things. I would do it, by laminating stringers and stuff like that. But I might try it. But that's not the way we build stairways today. And I have my own methods that I know work. So I would use my own methods. But in this case, when I'm looking at the plan, I'm looking at the plans of this stairway out of this whole book, and I can see how it would work. And the author says that he's seen stairways built from these plans successfully before. So I have to take his word for it. I don't know that there's any um, engineering went into it at all. It's just a matter of that the guy, they knew how to do it and they did it. So but the difference is that the outside stringer is a series of stacked timber blocks that each one is cut the height of one step. Now the outside of this block is cut round to the diameter of the outside diameter of the stair. So that's a hard cut. You have to cut through about 7-8 inches of wood on a radius, but the inside is just a straight plane. These are stacked. The first 3 or 4 steps go all the way to the floor and form what they call it's part of the base of the stair, or the jib foot of a stair. That's a term you won't find anywhere, but that was called a jib foot. And from there, the stair cantilevers out, and each block is stacked on top of the other one, but it's shifted so that you have when you shift it, you actually have a step and a riser. Every time you put a block on, you shift it over to the next one, and you make another step and another riser. And the blocks were fastened together with a through bolt, one through bolt that went all the way through both blocks of wood. This is talking like a 3x8 or 4x8 stacked on edge, one right after another. And this is okay. And then on the out, I'm telling you how I'm looking at the plan. After that, they took 1x4s, just little short sticks, and put them along the outside and nailed them vertical sticks along the outside, all along the outside. Those are nailed into the curved timber steps. They call them these timbers grounds. Okay, and then the bottom would naturally have a stepped effect too, but that's cut off on a slope, which forms the helical line of the bottom that you're looking at. But before they did it, it was stepped on the top and the bottom because of these stacked timber grounds. Then they've got a board wrapping around it that's 1.25 inches thick, that they made it bend by putting saw kerfs in it and laying it up against these 1x4s. But the saw kerf, I don't know if you know what a saw kerf is, but a saw kerf is a groove cut in a board that doesn't go all the way through, and it allows you to bend that board. That's called kerfing. So this groove, they had a special saw for that, by the way, a kerfing saw. You could set the depth of the saw so it would only saw down to a certain depth. These kerfs have to stand plumb for this board that is going to be held up on an angle, but the kerf line is cut plumb, and it's on the inside, and that makes the board bend and twist and go around that makes a helical line that you're seeing there. That still is part of and that's inside. On the outside are just facings, 1/4-inch thick boards that he had to wet and stick in place, and that you don't see any nails in that, because that's usually stuck on with glue. Okay, And that's another myth. The no glue business is another part of the story that I'm not buying
Yeah, I've read
because
that it was built with no nails, but just wooden pegs and glue.
it can be done with wooden pegs and no glue, and there's whatnot. But if you have glue, you would use it.
Right.
Okay. And the glue that they did have and was common in every stair shop and every furniture shop everywhere was hide glue.
Mm.
Hide, and there was no, it's actually hot hide glue, and it's actually boiled horse hide. They
Mm.
boil it till it turned to glue. Okay, and this is amazing stuff. Horsehide glue, you heat it up. It's still being used today in musical instrument construction, among other things, pianos and guitars and everything. But it's hot, it's bubbling. Okay, and you brush it on, and then you put the wood on that you want to stick, and you rub the stick a little bit. It's called a rub joint. You rub the stick back and forth a little bit, and then all of a sudden it grabs. Okay, and then it holds. And then this, well, as the glue dries, it shrinks and pulls it together without clamps. There's nothing like it even today, even with modern adhesives. There's nothing quite like hide glue. It's wonderful stuff. And so you don't have to use any nails at all. It's the contact cement of the 19th century. You know what contact cement is? It's the stuff that you stick something on and it's stuck right away. You put two pieces together with contact cement and it's instantly stuck.
Yeah, well,
And
that's
so
what the
that's,
soffit is made of. If I can point to it, the soffit there, which is the bottom part of the staircase called the soffit, the museum website says that that was put there by Philip Hesch, and it was made of horsehair and lime, like a composite, and then later painted a wood color. So interestingly, that picture above your head, it was, with technology, they removed the banisters and handrails to make it look more like it was originally. But originally, it didn't even have the bottom, that bottom soffit. I mean, it looks much more beautiful with a soffit. But without that bottom, you would be able to, what would you see there if that bottom wasn't there?
if you took the bottom off, I think you would see these timbers that I'm talking about along the outside and the bracing, all the rafter bracing they have inside. These rafter bracing, the way they run them, they're all everything is in compression. When you step on the stairway, there's nothing that has to flex and bend like like just like a floor joist. Um, that's another term you're not familiar with probably, but um, so the whole stair is in compression, and it can't fall down unless you smash the wood.
Hmm.
You have to smash wood. So anyway, so that's part of it. So that's what you would see. And by the way, what you're talking about with the horse hair and all that, it's just plaster. It's
Yeah,
got
plaster.
horsehair in it. It's just got horsehair in the plaster
Mhm.
to make it resist cracking because of the flex that goes up. The stairway flexes when you walk on it. It
Mhm.
bounces. It's supposed to bounce. And that's why those brackets didn't work out because anything to restrict the flex is not particularly a good idea. Stairway naturally will bounce a little bit, and you
Mhm.
have to if you're going to put plaster is it's like cement. It doesn't want to bend. So in order to not have a bunch of cracks in it, you put they put horsehair in it, or
Mhm.
whatever you're talking about. They also did the same. They also put canvas was another trick. Just
Mhm.
put a piece of canvas up there and plaster over that. That's
Mhm.
canvas embedded plaster. So today we have plastic embedded plaster.
Mhm.
So, those are things to help plaster flex without cracking. So
Wow.
the bottom is flat.
Well,
That's
it's
part
so
of that.
interesting. The now you mentioned you didn't know where the wood sample came from. As you said, it was a very small piece that came from close to the top of the staircase, just before it reached the balcony, because the curator, Richard Lenslee, said he went up to the very top because it was starting to come detached from the choir loft, and there was a little hole there, and he said he was able to take out a little piece, and he gave it to Forrest Easley to analyze for 15 months with a magnifying glass and a microscope, a high power microscope. So that's where the actual wood piece came from. And I've also read other papers that said exactly as you say, that basically the church had to be built first and then the staircase put in later because you have the bottom and the top that acts kind of like the bookends so that the staircase fits in there rigidly. So it's like it's not going to go anywhere because of the tension. So some people say, well, it's kind of like they forgot about the staircase. Oops, oh, we forgot to put a staircase in. But other people, such as Mary Cook, says no, and also Richard Lindsley says that he thinks the architect's original design was to put it in at the end because of the special design. Because if you look at the prototype, Sainte-Chapelle in Paris, it has not one but two spiral staircases on both sides, and those were added later. So it's interesting that if you just do a little bit of research and you find some of these beautiful staircases throughout the world, there's some. Of course, I'm a layman, so I don't really know what I'm talking about, but they have very similar design. And I'll list down in the comment section below 9 staircases that I found, one of which that you mentioned in Utah. There's also one in Virginia City, Nevada, at the old Washoe Club. It's also called the AKA Millionaires Club. And interestingly, if you look at a video of that, the tour guide says that this staircase in Nevada, which is featured on Ripley's Believe It or Not, was built by the same carpenter in Santa Fe, New Mexico, that built this one. And it was around the same time frame, so it's possible. But the curator of the Loretto Museum wasn't aware of that staircase in a neighboring state of Nevada. But let me ask you the fifth question. We're almost at the last question, which would be number 6. But the fifth question is real simply, they have the mystery of who built the staircase. So, in your opinion, the museum website says they think, there's a legend that either it was Saint Joseph who came from heaven, or it was another master carpenter that he sent to do the job. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts, I believe it was Frenchie Rokas who did it based on an obituary. And I'll tell you why, okay? I think he did it, and I think he abandoned the job for whatever reason, but he abandoned it. But he never took a dime. He never took any money for this job because he was leaving a deadly. There's a word when you abandon a job, that's called abandon a job. Can't if I come and work in your house and all of a sudden I'm not there anymore and you can't find me to pay me and stuff, that's called abandoning a job. He abandoned the job because it didn't have a handrail, and without a handrail, it's a deadly hazard.
Hmm.
So he didn't want to be linked to a deadly hazard. And
Mm,
so he remained unknown. He never took any money for it because it wasn't finished. He left it and he left his name off of it until he was dead. Then it was published that he built a stairway. Okay. So that's where there's no reason for him for somebody to just print that. It's a contemporary newspaper that came out of. Okay.
yeah, it was in the Santa Fe, New
I'm inclined to
Mexican.
believe that story.
Yeah, yeah,
And
you're right. Yeah, his
as far
obituary
as
was in
being,
the Santa Fe, New
go ahead.
Mexican.
As far as being Saint Joseph or Jesus or something like that, I'm not buying any of that because you know neither one of them, if they were carpenters at all, is debatable. And even if they were carpenters, they wouldn't have no experience building this kind of stuff unless they were building this stuff in heaven, which is possible. But I don't think miracles not necessarily work that way. I do believe there are miracles connected to the stairway, but not just the ones we're familiar with.
Right.
I can go into that, and I will. But if you ask me, but
Well, yeah, I remember
I
you told me before the show that you were afraid that people might throw some tomatoes at us for you
yeah.
saying, what you thought. And I said, no, please be honest. Tell us exactly what you think. Because, particularly for Christians, we need to go by faith and reason and, not just believe things, with like a blind type of faith. And some people have said that, if it was the legend of Saint Joseph, some people think, well, that might be too pious or sometimes people might see what they want to see, but we can't, eject reason at the same time. And I remember you said before the show, you said that you thought that the sisters prayed and their prayers were answered, but you just don't think that it was Saint Joseph who came down from heaven, but someone else was sent.
Absolutely. And that's one of the miracles that's connected to the stair, is that even though it doesn't require angels or God to do this. It was but it was still an answer to prayer, and I actually believe that, and I wouldn't want to offend anybody that believes otherwise, because I do believe it was an answer to prayer. That's one of the miracles. The other miracle is that they actually found somebody in Santa Fe in the 19th century that knew how to do this. And by the way, Santa Fe is not, there's nothing there. There's no lumber there. There's no, it's not a big giant city. It's really in the middle of nothing. And it's the middle of the desert. There's
Yes.
cactus growing around it, you know? But they managed to find somebody who had this kind of skill. And that is a miracle. And then they found another guy to do the handrail. That's a miracle. And
Yes.
then none of the sisters fell off and killed themselves using the stairway without a banister, and that's a miracle. See,
Yes,
that's
absolutely. And another miracle, I think, this might sound a little bit tongue in cheek, but I mean it with all sincerity. I think one of the biggest miracles was how God was able to get all these different people with different languages, different cultures to work together. Because at first, when the bishop, rode into town, he had to prove that he was actually the one commissioned to be the new bishop because there was another priest there that said, "Who are you?" And so they had Frenchmen, they had Mexicans, they had Irish. Mother Magdalene, who became, the mother superior of the school there, she was Irish and she had to learn Mexican Spanish. So you had most of the common workers were Mexicans, and then you had the most of the architects and the builders. Those were Frenchmen, and then you had these Austrians. So I think one miracle is that everyone was able to come together and build this amazing Gothic uh, church in the
including the
middle of the
Native
desert.
Americans. The Native Americans are there too.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
already
exactly.
there.
And and there was Billy the Kid was there. You had the Civil War just ending. It was really the wild, wild west. Um, so yeah, and in fact, you mentioned Frenchie's obituary. He died. He was shot when he retired.
Yeah, it was
He went
murdered.
to a ranch and he had his cabin out on a ranch, and he got into cattling and yeah, he was shot twice. The first time he survived, but then later, many years later, another guy came and shot him dead. So and also the architect, Projectus Muley, he died prematurely. Another architect was shot by the bishop's nephew. So it was the Wild West back then as well. So all
It
these
was it
things,
was the Wild West.
yeah.
But
So I mean, with all that said, it's really a miracle that the whole church even got built. It's quite amazing. The whole story is fascinating.
what the reason one of that I'm emotional about is that I don't think it's fair to blame things we can't explain, or not blame, but credit God with doing all this stuff, that with things that we can't explain, just because we can't explain it. And
Right.
where the actual human builders they worked a long time to gain the skill to do this kind of stuff. And I think we owe them the benefit of the doubt. And the world is full of magnificent, marvelous, miraculous creations of all kinds. And most of them are done by the children of God right here. So, and we can give God credit and his children credit for this kind of stuff. But you know, I think if God works miracles, I think he works them mostly through us here on this earth. And I don't think that's, an unrealistic thing. But I mean, Moses used a staff to part the Red Sea, but I mean, it was Moses who did it. Then God didn't come down and do it. God
Right.
did it, of course, Anyway, that's my point there. And I think it's unfair that we ascribe it to heavenly, that I it's a nice story, but it does a disservice to the craftsman who actually did this.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I know you're not Catholic, but what you're saying is very Catholic. For example, a guy named Pope John Paul II, he said pretty much what you said. He said faith and reason are like two wings on which the human spirit rises to the contemplation of truth. And God has placed in the human heart a desire to know the truth. So yeah, we got to go by faith and reason. And like you said, we can't have kind of like a God of the gaps scenario where just because we can't understand something, we say, oh, God must have done it. That's the end of the discussion. Because yeah, I agree. It's a little bit immature because the way that God normally works is he works through the human hands of us, for good or for bad sometimes, but he likes to
And
work.
not space aliens or anything like that. It's humans. Humans have always been clever. They've always been clever.
Well,
That's
I
part of
don't
our
know.
problem.
I might have to disagree with you there because this is in New Mexico where Roswell happens to be, and there's lots of little green men with UFOs running around. I mean, it's not surprising that New Mexico is called the land of enchantment because this is not the only mysterious thing because there's a lot of tourists that come and tourists, I think 250,000 tourists a year come to the Loretto Museum. It's now a destination wedding chapel. It does make a pretty penny, and it's a very interesting story. But yeah, I think you're 100% right. God normally works through people.
Yeah. Any rate,
Well,
it's been fun talking to you.
yeah, likewise, Jim. Well, for my last question before we go, and this might be the hardest question, Saint Joseph, he was always working and dreaming. So I know you've retired, but do you have any projects that you might be working on or any dreams yet to fulfill?
Yeah, I'd like to build a model of this stairway, but build it the way it's done out of the book, out of this 19th century book, because all the models that are out there are built by somebody else's method, which really proves nothing. So if you want to know this book, by the way, this author was very, very popular in the 19th centuries, and it cost a whole his his book cost a whole week's pay.
Hmm.
So but they were a must read in every stair shop and they were very popular, and they were sold in Europe even, but all over. And so I know, and because I've seen the plans, I have an idea how this stairway is built. And I'd like to build a model, I think, of the stairway as it is shown in the book. And that I think that's worthwhile, something worthwhile. But other than that, I spend all my time working on that darn boat of mine.
Well, that's awesome. Well, that's awesome. Well, if you build that staircase, please let me know and we'll have you back on the show. And I'd like to look at some pictures of it and learn your story about how you built it. That'd be amazing.
Okay, I may do that.
That's awesome.
I may
Well,
do that.
I don't know sign language, but I wanna say thank you to your daughter for letting you use her studio today. And
You're welcome. Thank you. You're welcome.
hey, thank you so much. It's been really great having you on here. And I do know that sign language. That's about the only one
Very
I
cool.
know. And I think it's kind of cool. I invented my own little sign language that I always end every show. I like to remind people to go to Joseph. Peace.
Okay.
Thank you,
We'll
Jim.
see you later.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Take care. Thank you so much.